Hi, my name is Barbie Enrico, and I'm here to welcome you to Pitch Tips Zoomcast, and where venture capitalist Fred Haney gives feedback to CEOs of startup companies to help them raise capital. Fred is an experienced venture capital fund manager, angel investor, entrepreneur, founder Monday Club, and author of The Fundable Startup, one of the best selling books about startup companies getting funded. So let's find out what Fred has to say to today's CEO.
Hi, and welcome to the Pitch Tips Zoomcast, a program in which I, Fred Haney, meet with promising entrepreneurs to discuss their business plans and give them some feedback. And it's an opportunity for you to be a fly on the wall and learn from the conversation. And it's an opportunity for our entrepreneurs to get some ideas about how they might improve their pitch decks and improve their chances of getting funded. Our guest today is Jason Robinson. He's the CEO of Playbook Five. And I'm going to ask Jason to tell you a little bit about himself and Playbook Five.
Fred, thanks for having me. Appreciate you sharing the platform. Playbook Five, well, again, my name is Jason Robinson from Los Angeles, California. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Playbook Five. And Playbook Five is a learning platform for athletes and coaches to study the game remotely using virtual reality. We founded this company in 2016 and have been excited and been enjoying it ever since, just helping players get more reps and have a better experience with the sport.
Great. And tell us a little more about how you got involved, Jason. What's your background? How did you get into this? Where did the idea come from?
So I was growing up in LA. My dad was a high school football coach for 30 years here at Locke High School. He also played college football at Grambling State University. And growing up around the game and just growing up a coach's son, I was naturally drawn to the game. That ended up paving the way for my career as a player. And I ended up playing for my dad. From there, I went on to Boise State University, and was able to be a part of the championship teams there. And, after I was done playing, I just, I had this deep passion and love for just creating tools and finding ways to improve operations. And I just went on this search for figuring out ways to, how could I take, these new technologies and these new innovations and correct things that maybe I faced in the past or my father faced in the past that were inefficient. And on that journey, I was actually introduced to Palmer Luckey, the founder of Oculus virtual reality, ended up selling to Facebook. And, one thing led to another, just ideating and thinking and figuring out the best way to really position this technology of virtual reality to help sport. Went down that rabbit hole of thinking, and lo and behold, Playbook Five was created. And that was 5 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's great. Well, the idea here is, if you've read my book, The Fundable Startup, my concept that about 1%, just to make a metaphor, about 1% of companies get funded and probably 99% don't. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we move as many companies as we can into the 1%. So we kind of know what it takes to appeal to investors and get that check. Along the way here, part of the purpose behind this program is to let you, the viewer, look into the conversation, see what happens. But another part of it is to help Jason focus his message. I mean, if you can send your message in a minute or 3 minutes or 5 minutes and have a crystal clear conversation about it, that's a great step forward toward meeting with investors. It's so important to send your message in a clear and concise way. So that's part of what we're trying to do here. It's to focus and make the message as specific as possible. So with that, let's ask Jason to go ahead and give a slightly longer version of his pitch deck, maybe about 3 or 4 minutes. Do you want to do a screen share or you want to just talk it?
I can talk here if that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, so no worries. So Playbook Five, and I mentioned previously that the whole idea was to correct inefficiencies in the game using this technology and using innovation. So one of the biggest problems in sport right now are injuries, right? Right now there's a document. It's been documented that 51% of emergency room in high school result from practice. And to put that in perspective, there's about 12 practice hours for every one competition hour. So what that means is players are more likely to be injured during practice than they are in competition. So how does that get solved? Well, right now there's only a couple ways to do that. You can hold players out. You can try to do more off-field training that may be inefficient, or you can figure out other ways to get that same preparation and preparation instilled in the athlete. That's where Playbook Five shows up. So as our technology allows coaches and players to study the game remotely, they do not have to expose themselves to the same injuries, and also be able to better allocate their time in practice. Another issue in sport that shows up a lot is just the ratio from player to coach and not being able to get everybody on the team the equal amount of time to prepare. What happens is a lot of time in sport, you focus on the ones and your starters. But as anybody that's a fan of sport and watches sport, that you oftentimes going to call on those backups. You're oftentimes going to call on those threes that may have to come in during a game and make an impact. So Playbook Five is a tool that helps a team stay prepared and ready to go from top to bottom by providing access to virtual reality and a tool that can train like no other tool we've ever had. And really the business model and the way we sell this, essentially, we have two customers, one being our enterprise customer, which is our school, our organization, and our team. And when they're buying Playbook Five, they're buying Playbook Five as a tool, a practice supplement tool to help get their system customized and placed on there so their players can enjoy it. Now, we also have a B2C model directly to player that we've been ideating over the past 2 years alongside some research with professional athletes. And the whole point with that model is to provide players that may not even belong to a team, or maybe they're landlocked or they don't have access to the camps and clinics that some other regions may have, giving them access to the same amount of information through virtual reality. And how we really get out there and grow this deal and get people involved through our go-to-market is partnerships. Partnerships are a huge part of our deal. Right now, we have active partnerships with Showcase Football as well as Cypher Sports, and trying to leverage people who have already been in the market to help open up the door for us and close some deals. It's been fruitful for us thus far, and we know that if we can continue to find the right partners and also communicating with our existing users and our new users, that we'll be able to continue to improve the product and solve the needs that are within the market.
Okay, that's great. That's a good summary of your business. I think you did a pretty good job of telling me what problem you're solving. You could probably tighten that up a little bit and make it a little more clear. What I'm not getting a clear picture of is exactly how you're solving it. I mean, you talk about working remotely and using virtual reality, but explain a little more about exactly how you're solving the problem. What is your solution? How does it solve the problem? How does it work? Give me kind of maybe an example, a very concrete example of how it works. How does it solve the problem?
Sure. So our system with the product, a team is able to take all of their schematic elements in their playbook and upload it on our platform. Once it's
hang on a second. As we go, you want to be as specific as possible.
Yep.
What's a schematic element? I mean, what does a playbook look like? I have no idea.
So generally, a playbook will look like, I wish I had one around here. In fact, I do, but it's a thick old book. It's a very thick book that has every single. Think of a employee manual, right? So you come into your job on day one, and you might have a huge manual that has been handed down that tells you everything about the company, what the processes are, what the procedures are, what's your expectations. That exists in sport as well, and that's called the playbook.
So White Sox right means the quarterback takes the ball, takes a step to the right, and hands it to his fullback.
Exactly.
So,
But there's
so it's all those plays
all
spelled out in detail.
it's your centralized hub and really your glossary for everything related to the team's playbook, right? So right now that exists in a huge playbook. And when I was in college, what happens is you get one about every Monday because you have a new scouting report and it's about this thick. And then what happens is on Thursday, Saturday morning, actually, right before the game, the guy come around with a trash can bag, collect them, and then shred them. And that's the old way of doing things. And if you guys, it's a lot of paper too. So there's an environmental play here too for anyone that can kind of intuit where this thing is headed. So anyway, we take all of that information and we move that into a digital domain, which is the Playbook 5 server. And now those plays can exist on a server and players have access to them remotely. So before you even get to the virtual reality side of this thing, there's so much value created by the platform from just having a digital version of it that does not need paper. You do not have to track around. You do not have to worry about it being stolen or left over and have to do these shredding processes. It's in the cloud. Now, the way we kind of show up as an experiential solution a little bit to help solve this problem is we've developed a way to actually take that playbook and then turn it into a virtual reality experience that is a simulation and a direct simulation of what they would do on that field. And that becomes an experiential rep for that player. So what that means is if 969 wide drag, we want to run that versus Boston College, right? So we throw that play in on a Monday. Well, generally, we wouldn't get a chance to practice that play until we get to the field, we get everybody lined up, the coach is out there and gives their directives. Well, on our system, the player can step into that role, study that play the exact way the coach wants it to work out in virtual reality. And now what that does is when that player arrives for practice, his brain is literally already gone through the imagery associated with that play and has started to create an association with the assignment. And that helps two ways. So that one, you're for a coach, right? Anyone can imagine the efficiency there. That you don't have to re-explain the information. There's a huge period in practice right now that's called the install period. So every day before practice, there's about 20, 30 minutes. And the coach just goes through walkthrough with everybody, right? And you're doing this, and we're doing this. It's a highly inefficient period. This allows for a coach or a player to go through that install period remotely. So when they show up, the coach can better allocate that time. And also when that player shows up, that player is more confident because they've already seen it. Their mind has already experienced the expected outcome of the team in the preferred way. So does that help answer the question?
That's a great, it's a great explanation. Your stock just went up a bunch because I'm understanding much better.
Okay.
I'm understanding way better than I did before how the virtual reality fits. So in your presentation, I know it's hard to capture that, but maybe you could make a little diagram that shows how the playbook goes in and the virtual reality. You got some little cartoon characters and the player himself sort of standing in there playing his role. You could even use 20 seconds of video or something like that if you could. But what you want to do is right up front, real early on in your presentation, you want to give your audience a very clear idea of what's happening here. What are we doing? What problem are we solving? How are we solving it? How do we know it works? How do we know that this makes things better? It's got to be very concrete. Otherwise, you're talking and your audience is kind of scratching their head wondering what's happening.
Sure.
So that was great. That was a very good explanation of that part of it. Let's see. I had made a couple other notes here. Oh, well, do you have some results? I mean, can you point to some? I know you've got some customers, over a dozen, something like that.
Yeah, so we have over a dozen paying customers. We have about another 5 to 7 that are currently using it in a piloted type of engagement. But some results that we've seen. So two main ones that we look at. One, we did a research project at the University of Loughborough in England with their American football team. And what we found out is through the research is that players that use Playbook Five actually registered a higher PGK score prior to competition and practice. And what PGK is a fancy word for confidence, perceived general knowledge. So from a research perspective, that's just how we're showing up. Now, from more of an anecdotal perspective, Westlake High School was our first paying customer here in Westlake Village, California. Coach Kirksey, great program, great team. They gave us a chance early on as like I said, as our first paying customer. And at that time, they were one of the only teams we were working with. So I spent a lot more time hands-on with them during games, during practices, and what have you. Week 4, during their season, they were 4-0 at the time. I'm sorry, week 5. They were 4-0 at the time, and they're playing Oxnard. In the first half of the game, their first string quarterback goes down, their second string quarterback goes down, and Coach Kirksey has no clue what to do. We go into halftime, and I'll mention a big part of the way this solution works, we track all this engagement. So everything that the player is doing and seeing in virtual reality, the coach is able to track that data to understand exactly what their players know, exactly what positions they've played, exactly what plays they prefer, exactly what plays they do not prefer. All of that, it shows up in the data. So I was telling Coach Kirksey, I was like, hey, this would be a good time to look at the data, to figure out the next person to put in that quarterback. He trusted me. We went into the data report and we found out that a third string quarterback had actually been repping out, a third string receiver had actually been repping out quarterback reps in virtual reality. So what that meant was this guy played receiver, but during his off hours, he was studying the playbook from the quarterback perspective. And that is how specific our data is. We let you know exactly what position they're studying from, not just if they saw the play, what position they studied the play from. So I tell Coach Kirksey, hey, Brendan has been studying plays from the quarterback position. I think he should be your guy. What else do you have at this point? Your first string's down, second string's down. You have no other way. He says, okay, let's do it. I tugged his coat one more time and said, Coach Kirksey, think a little bit further though. We know what plays Brendan has run in his head. So when you put Brendan in, call these plays and call those plays to help him get comfortable. The same way you watch a game and you might watch a rookie quarterback and they throw some short passes or they a couple run plays to get that player's confidence going. I told Coach Kirksey, do the same thing. Run these plays to get Brendan's confidence going. He followed the directive. They go on and win the game. And they end up being 5-0. And that's a very, like I said, that's a experiential example about how the access to these plays, the access to these reps can show up in a competition for a team.
Yeah, that's another, again, that's just a great story. And what I see is a huge difference between the words in your elevator pitch and your enthusiasm and the reality and the success and the examples and the stories. I mean, they're kind of worlds apart. You need to bring those together. You need either some, I don't know how you do that, but you need to find a way to capture that on a slide in your pitch deck. Let's see, a couple more quick questions for you, Jason. Talk a little about how you see the market. I know you've talked about some big numbers, but the market you're actually targeting is more of a situation where there's multiple teams around. So talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so the American football market is like, that's our targeted market right now. Now we want to, in the future, we want to service soccer, basketball. We've already seen requests from those sports as well as lacrosse. Right now we're focused on solving for football, and we will bite off those other pieces as we know we can chew them comfortably. But that the size of that market, there's about 2.1 million US athletes playing American football right now. And that does not account for the youth and Pop Warner side of things, which we estimate to be at least about that number, if not more. So, and that's more than enough out there for us to build and run and scale a profitable business, right? But as we see this problem being solved in football, what's happening is other teams and other industries, and also through our clients, school districts, they oftentimes ask, can we service more players? Can we service more sports? Can we get more people on this platform? And our answer to them is yes, at the right time. And through that, that's kind of what has kind of shaped our market understanding is coming from the customer and them wanting us to serve other players within their school and within their teams. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Again, piece of advice. Most investors want to see you pretty narrowly focused. Tell me what the plan is for the next 12 months, 24 months, exactly what are you going to go after? So you want to be careful not to say there's this big multi-billion-dollar market out there. Investors' reaction is going to be, so what? You can't do anything about that. And if you did, you'd be 0.001% of the marketplace. So when you talk about your market opportunity and also your competition, you want to narrow the focus to the market that you really intend to serve. So yep. You're really, at least for now, you're focused on, I guess, school districts that have multiple football teams, 5 or 10. So how many of those are there? Where are they? How do you go after that? And show me that that's a market where maybe you could get 20 or 30% market share.
Yeah.
If not more, that's much more compelling to investors than, it's a huge market.
So to that point, Texas, I mentioned earlier, is our real big flagship state, if you will. There's about 19,000 ISDs, independent school districts, 1,900 in the state of Texas with multiple programs, and that includes high school and middle school programs. We've quoted a couple districts down in that space in the last week or so. Those end up being 400 plus viewer type contracts where we're going in and we're developing a plan to service the entire district. We're also putting together a plan like that for the entire state of Louisiana right now. But I agree with you. That would probably be much more meaningful to speak of, and how we create that scale through that. Because it does help us because we don't have to go. Our current way of doing this, and up till now, has been team to team, door to door, right? Not really scalable. Our margin isn't the greatest. We end up doing a lot more time to get that. We feel like going through these ISDs and going through these districts are going to be the best growth, plan for us moving forward.
So how much money are you trying to raise, and what's the near-term plan, and what kind of really significant milestones does it get you to? I mean, does it get you to how many customers? Maybe some strategic partners?
Yeah.
Quick answer there, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah. So 750,000 is what we're looking to raise right now, and what that handles for us is a couple things: sales and marketing, obviously, engineering and developing. In order to be able to take advantage of this opportunity to scale, we do have to improve the product and bring this thing up to a standard where it can actually afford that type of usage and bandwidth. But as far as users, we feel like with that lasting over 18-month runway, we'll be able to get about 25% of that Texas market that we're talking about and through that over the next 18, 24 months.
Great. Okay, Jason, good job. I think it's a good idea. I love your enthusiasm for it. Somehow you need to bring your enthusiasm and clarity into your pitch deck.
Gotcha. Yeah,
and we've talked about that a little bit. I think you can do a much better job of, you can probably tighten up a little on describing what problem you're solving, but you can certainly do a better job of describing exactly how you're solving it, what kind of results you've achieved already. You want to really make it sing. Somehow you need to get your enthusiasm into your pitch deck. And I do think maybe a couple little video clips would help people, especially with the virtual reality stuff. That goes right over people's head. Big goggles, so what? You need to make that sing and help people understand exactly what's going on. I'm sure it's an attractive market. You can define that as precisely as you can, but narrow your focus. Describe the market in terms of the market you intend to own, and not just all the market for sports software or some big broad thing. And then finally, my suggestion would be to spell out milestones, and I think you know this from reading The Fundable Startup. Spell out your milestones in terms of milestones and benchmarks that really reduce the risk in your company.
Okay.
You know, prove that it works. Prove that you can get customers. Prove that they'll pay your price. Prove that you can deliver it, maintain it, service it, all that kind of stuff. The more you can prove along the way, the less risk there is for investors. What you'd like to do is narrow it down so that the only real risk for investors is, if we put a lot of money into this company, can we scale it up to a national and international level?
Got you. That makes sense.
So with that, I think we'll sign off. Jason, thanks so much for participating in the Pitch Tips Zoomcast. Please, if you're watching, subscribe to our channel, YouTube channel, and come back. We'll be doing these frequently, and come back and join us for the next one. Thanks very much. Jason, thank you.
Thank you.